Friday in the 4th week of Easter.
A reading from the Acts of the Apostles.
When Paul came to Antioch in Pisidia, he said in the synagogue, "My brothers, children of the family of Abraham, and those others among you who are God-fearing, to us this word of salvation has been sent." The inhabitants of Jerusalem and their leaders failed to recognize him, and by condemning him they fulfilled the oracles of the prophets that are read Sabbath after Sabbath. For even though they found no grounds for a death sentence, they asked Pilate to have him put to death. And when they had accomplished all that was written about him, they took him down from the tree and placed him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead, and for many days he appeared to those who had come up with him from Galilee to Jerusalem. These are now his witnesses before the people. We ourselves are proclaiming this good news to you, that what God promised our fathers, he has brought to fulfillment for us, their children, by raising up Jesus. As it is written in the 2nd Psalm, "You are my son, this day I have begotten you." The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "You are my son, this day I have begotten you." I myself have set up my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will proclaim the decree of the Lord. The Lord said to me, "You are my son, this day I have begotten you." You are my son, this day I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for an inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. You shall rule them with an iron rod. You shall shatter them like an earthen dish. You are my son, this day I have begotten you. And now, O kings, give heed. Take warning, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice before him. With trembling rejoice. You are my son, this day I have begotten you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God. Have faith also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If there were not, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back again and take you to myself, so that where I am, you also may be. Where I am going, you know the way." Thomas said to him, "Master, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The Gospel of the Lord.
April 22nd, Friday of the 4th week of Easter. The first reading comes from Acts of the Apostles, chapter 13, verses 26 to 33. Paul speaks to the people in the synagogue in Antioch of Pisidia, and he invites them to consider what happened to Jesus, that God had sent Jesus as had been foretold by the prophets. They themselves know what the prophets say. Jesus fulfilled all those promises about the Messiah. But what happened? He was condemned and executed because the Jewish leaders, although they had nothing to condemn him for, wanted him dead. He was buried, but God raised him from the dead. Remember, that's the standard formula that's used for the resurrection. It's not that Jesus rose from the dead. God raised him from the dead. And he continues, "We've come to tell you the good news that Jesus died for our sins. We are now free from those sins. We can be children of God." And in fact, Jesus himself was the Son of God, because in the 2nd Psalm it says, "You are my son, today I have become your father." Now those were words that were originally used over the king of Israel. When he was enthroned, he was adopted as a son of God, a viceroy of God upon the earth. Now we all share in that dignity through Jesus. The Gospel comes from John 14, 1-6. Jesus is telling his disciples that he's going away, but their hearts should not be troubled, because this is for their good. He's going to heaven to prepare a place for them, that through his death He is opening the doors of heaven. And he even speaks about how there are many rooms that he's preparing for them. Now, what is the meaning of many rooms? Does it mean that there is enough room for many people? Or does it mean that each group of followers will be in a different room, so there's many ways to follow him? It's really not clear. What is clear is that this is all foretold, and this is part of God's plan. So Jesus' death is not an accident. It's something that God has planned from before time began. Now, Jesus says, you know where I'm going. Thomas says, we don't know. Jesus responds, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He is the way. In fact, early Christians were called followers of the way. He is the way that leads to the Father. Without him, we can't possibly hope to find God, because God is spiritual and God is beyond our understanding. But Jesus has come into the world to explain who God is. Thus, he's also the truth. What he says is the absolute truth. Remember, this is a dualistic gospel, truth and lie, life and death, white and black. Jesus is the guarantor that whatever he says about the Father is true, and he's the life. Remember how when Lazarus dies, Jesus tells Martha that he is the resurrection and the life. Not that he'll give us the resurrection, but rather he is the resurrection. Because when we live with him, our life is so filled with vitality that even if we die, we will be alive in him. And may God bless us.